Liberty in our lifetimes in a free state of our own. That's the vision. That's the dream. And we are building it in New Hampshire. I'm Eric Brakey, your host and renegade statesman for the Porcupine Report. Welcome to your source for porcupine news and free-range conversation on matters of liberty. All right, let's hop into the show. Hey there, everyone out there on the interwebs. This is Eric Brakey, your host, your renegade statesman, executive director of the Free State Project, and welcome to episode 10 of the Porcupine Report. Glad to have you here with us this evening. Today, we're going to have a great conversation with a new friend of mine, someone who I met at the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and works with a great organization. He's the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. But before we get there, I want to tell you about, you know what it is, the Porcupine Freedom Festival. You know, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, we're looking forward to it. We've got more and more great speakers signing up and people. We've already got over 1,000 people who've bought tickets, and this event sells out. If you don't know what PorcFest is, it is a family-friendly freedom festival taking place June 17th through the 23rd at Rogers Campground in Lancaster, New Hampshire. So we're going to have great guests speaking with us. Dr. Ron Paul himself he'll be speaking. Now, he's going to be zooming in virtually, right? He doesn't travel as much as he used to. We can all understand this. But he's going to be zooming in to speak with us over the internet at PorcFest. But we've also got so many other great speakers who are zooming in physically in their cars and by airplanes, however they're zooming physically to get to Lancaster, New Hampshire, to get to Rogers Campground and joining us. They're going to be there. 2,000 of your favorite libertarians, including Scott Horton, Gene Epstein, Spike Cohen, who we just announced is coming on board, Jeffrey Tucker, James Bovard, David Friedman, and so many more. Jack Hunter, a recent guest on our show, looks like we're talking with him about joining us at PorcFest. You get to go camping with 2,000 of your favorite libertarians. Why would you want to miss out on that? This is not to be missed. So bring your friends, bring your family, and reserve your campsite while supplies last. Grab your tickets at porcfest.com. That is pork with a C, not with a K. Like I always say, if you go to porcfestwithak.com, I do not know what you're going to find. Hopefully, it's just some delicious barbecue. Either way, it won't be the family-friendly freedom festival you're looking for. So go to porcfestwithac.com and grab your tickets and your campsite before they run out. All right, let's get into the show. As I mentioned, we're going to have with us Daniel Diaz, who is the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. Now, I do want to mention Daniel was not the person who was originally scheduled to be with us this evening. In fact, I had scheduled the founder of Citizens for Sound Money was supposed to be here with us today. A great friend to all who love liberty in New Hampshire, former New Hampshire State Senator Jim Forsyth. Now, Jim is someone who was a real pioneer of the liberty movement in this country. He is someone who not just has done tremendous work in the Sound Money movement, as we will be talking about, but Jim was someone who, back when I was a baby liberty activist back in like 2012, I was working on the Ron Paul campaign in Maine. I'd never even considered running for office. And Jim Forsyth was a state senator in New Hampshire who was fighting for liberty and was a bold champion for Ron Paul during his presidential campaigns. And I only got to meet him once or twice back then, but I looked up to him and I thought, wow, to have someone in a body like the state Senate who believes in liberty and is willing to fight for it. I mean, we can take it for granted a little bit these days with how many hundreds of liberty legislators have been elected around the country, you know, most of them in New Hampshire, I will add. But back then it was a very rare thing. And tragically, in the weeks leading up to the New Hampshire Liberty Forum, where Jim was scheduled to speak, and Citizens for Sound Money was one of our top tier sponsors for the event, Jim was in a tragic kite surfing accident, and tragically he passed away. So I didn't feel right giving up the slot to someone else to talk about something else. I wanted to talk about Jim. I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to honor the work that he has done in building up this organization, Citizens for Sound Money. So instead of Jim being with us today, I'm really pleased to welcome to the show his colleague, Daniel Diaz, the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. Daniel, welcome to the
Hey,
show.
hey, Eric. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I know that it's I really appreciate you taking the time to be on, because I know that right now you are actually in the Missouri State Capitol, and you're there. You all are working on sound money legislation in Missouri. What's the legislation that you all are there lobbying for right now?
Yeah, so we are working on the Constitutional Money Act. It's similar to the Sound Money Act. We worked with a gentleman, you met him, he was at the Liberty Forum, Patrick Holland. He is the founder of the Missouri Freedom Initiative. And he's working with multiple legislators in the Senate and the House side to get the bill passed. Now, this bill is actually the most comprehensive sound money bill in the country. It does a lot more than anything else. Right now, there's 5 states that have made gold and silver legal tender, but this bill goes way beyond that. Not only does it make
Mm.
gold and silver legal tender, gets rid of capital gains. It allows the state to residents in the state to pay their taxes in gold and silver. It also makes gold and silver transactional, so that residents of the state of Missouri can put their hard-earned money into real money, right, gold and silver, and then they can be able to use private solutions to spend that gold and silver with the debit card, send it like with Venmo, and save even for merchants on transaction fees, instead of using a debit card to swipe and they're getting charged 2 to 4%. They can just receive gold and silver at a much lower rate and save on their transaction fees. So this is the most comprehensive bill in the country, and we've been working with multiple organizations and have filed or have been working with legislators in 25 states to make gold and silver legal tender and make it transactional. So we're here. I just got out of the institution's finance committee, I believe it's what it's called here. It's currently in the Senate floor. If it gets passed in the Senate floor, we're just waiting for it to get to the House floor, and there will be a conference committee because the bills are slightly different. But whether or not it gets passed in its entirety or it pulls out some of the parts of the bill, for instance, the Treasury putting at least 1% of its reserves in gold and silver to protect the state's assets. There is some controversy about that. But I mean, it is phenomenal piece of legislation. And here, we at Citizens for Sound Money are going to definitely use some of the provisions that they've added in other states.
That's really awesome, and it is exciting to see in so many states the advances that are being made for sound money. I mean, I will tell you, in the state of Maine, where I currently serve in the Maine State Senate, so I finish up my term before I make the move to New Hampshire and join the Free State, where a lot of advances have been made on sound money in New Hampshire, but in Maine, it's like, I don't know, we're still living in the fiat age. I mean, it is frustrating. So in my last year, I sponsored a number of sound money bills, from eliminating the sales tax on gold and silver, eliminating the income tax on gold and silver, allowing us to keep part of the rainy day fund in kind of gold and silver, recognizing again as legal tender. We came close on a few of them, but Maine is so far behind. I mean, I think we're one of like less than 5 states that you still pay sales tax when you buy gold and silver, right? And this is the thing that drives me so crazy, is not only you pay the sales tax, you pay capital gains too. So, right, you put your money in the Wall Street casino, right? And you don't pay sales tax when you buy a stock in the Wall Street casino. You pay capital gains tax when you cash out, right? But if you want to purchase gold or silver, you pay sales tax when you purchase it, and then if it appreciates in value relative to the
Yeah,
depreciating dollar, right? We all know that just because the dollar value of something increases doesn't mean it's actually increased in value, because the
correct.
dollar's value is falling because it's funny money, monopoly money. You also pay capital gains, so you're getting double taxed. And safe to say, we came close to getting, the sales tax eliminated, but everything else Maine is so far behind, and it's sad just to know that in this time of inflation, that so many people are being prevented by their state governments of being able to save and transact in the very money that is like declared to be money in our U.S.
Yeah.
Constitution.
Yep.
Where would you say that? I guess in recent years, it seems like there's been a lot of bubbling up and interest in sound money in over the last decade. I mean, especially, I'm certain that the inflation we've been experiencing lately is a big part of that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, I don't know, it feels like if you went like a decade ago or 2 decades ago, it would just be like a
Ron
few
Paul talking about it.
yeah, it's just Ron Paul on the floor of Congress, and everyone's looking at him, rolling their eyes. There he goes again, crazy Uncle
Yeah.
Ron talking about gold and silver, right? And now, like most things, people have started to wake up and realize maybe he was onto something.
Yeah.
Um, what do you see as like the trajectory of like the sound money movement, and how things have changed over the course of recent years?
Yeah. I want to just share a little bit about Dr. Jim Forsyth on that matter, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't exist, Citizens of Sound Money.
Yeah.
He was moved by Ron Paul. Ron Paul got Jim Forsyth. He read and the Fed, and that is what really got him into the precious metals. And his foresight and the the future collapse, and I don't think it's that far off, of the fiat economic system, and wanting to spread sound money. Like, one thing that Jim always did was he always gave out our silver rounds. We have 1/5 silver rounds, and he always loved spreading the sound money to everyone, because he thought it was so important that people protect themselves and their wealth through putting their hard-earned energy and economic energy into sound money, that he would even make deals where it was barely profitable, with his businesses in the gold and silver industry. And what I think he started was a catalyst in the sound money movement that is going to get legislation passed across the entire country, state by state by state. And I really think, even though Utah was the first state in the union to pass legal tender, I think it was 2012, and
Mm.
then Wyoming followed, Oklahoma. Right now, there's only 5 states: Wyoming, Utah, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Arizona. Uh, it's one thing to have gold and silver as legal tender. It's another thing to make it functional and transactional,
Yeah.
because who's going to buy a 2200 piece or $2,300 piece of gold, 1 ounce gold? It's not really feasible for the common person. Heck, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and that number's really increased because of the inflation rate. And people, one thing I've noticed when I've lobbied in New Hampshire and I've lobbied in South Carolina and talking to normal people, they're struggling financially. They can't make ends meet. I was at the
Yeah.
local watering hole where I live, and literally 10 people around me, all living paycheck to paycheck, wondering how they're going to make money to live. And I think that right there is the difference between when Ron Paul was talking about sound money and when we are talking about sound money and pushing legislation, because the people feel it. They feel the impact of inflation and their inability to actually make a difference in their way of living. So I think not only is the personal impact on people's lives making this a true sound money movement of the people, kind of like the revolution, right? The Ron Paul revolution. This is the sound money movement revolution, if you want to say, because it isn't just special interests. It isn't just citizens sound money. It is a grassroots effort. Missouri is getting this through because of leaders that are listening to the grassroots. And it is, I mean, I really do think Missouri is going to be the first state in the union to make this the Constitutional Money Act with the electronic legal tender, paying salaries in gold and silver, paying taxes in gold and silver. It really be the first state to do this, and it's going to be the first domino.
Oh, we lost Daniel.
Am I there? We're good.
Hey, you're back. So we lost
Right,
you
sorry
for a
about
moment.
that. Yeah, I don't know.
It's all right. But you were saying, so Missouri may be the first state to really see this happen?
It'd be the first domino of many. We've had 18 states file sound money legislation, the Sound Money Act in different variations. And almost, and we were in 25 states. In all 25 states, except for a handful, the bills have died. But Missouri is the leader in the country with the Sound Money Act, or the Constitutional Money Act, the way they call it here. And if Missouri passes this, I can see legislators in Florida, Texas, New Hampshire, taking copies of this robust sound money bill and putting it in their legislatures, pushing that bill through. Because, look, I mean, I'm not a professional analyst, I'm not a professional economist, but I really do think that within the next, I'm going to probably get slapped by the board saying this, 2 to 3 months, there's going to be a major economic issue, economic collapse in our country. Look, a report came out about last week that there's $950 billion in unrealized losses in 278 states.
Yeah.
278 states. And only 16 of those have assets of over $10 billion. That means the other banks are regional banks. And why is it $950 billion in unrealized losses? It's because of loans, commercial real estate loans that are coming due, that because the interest rates are so high, they can't roll over those loans and refinance them. So they're going to default. Well, that's almost $1 trillion. $1 trillion lost in regional banks is going to cause banks to collapse. They said they're keeping it in the article. It says that the Federal Reserve is keeping it under the radar because they're trying to find other banks to purchase these regional banks. They see the problem and they know it. What happens when those banks collapse? Well, their stock market is going to collapse because of those bank stocks. If the stock market collapses, that's going to reverberate to the debt market, right? Because now there's another bailout. The Federal Reserve is already stretched. The FDIC, they don't really have enough currency to cover all these banks collapsing. Now the debt market is going to be pumped with a bunch of new currency. That's going to create an inflationary event. I mean, I'm not being doomsday. There's a lot of articles that your audience can look up about the coming commercial real estate collapse and all the effects that that will cause in the economy. So Mike Maloney, who I don't know if you're familiar with him, he's one of the godfathers of the sound money movement. I mean, he predicts it's going to be a collapse greater than '08 and potentially as bad or worse than the Great Depression. And that's why this bill is so important. That's why Dr. Jim Forsyth, was so impassioned about getting the Sound Money Act pushed across the country, because we want to help as many people as possible protect themselves from this oncoming economic collapse due to the irresponsibility of the federal government and their spending.
I think that you're right. I mean, that is why this legislation and the broader effort for sound money is so important right now, because the big collapse is going to happen, right? I think probably the last exit we had on this highway, the last chance we had to avoid this, was in 2012 when Ron Paul ran for president, and he offered a prescription for how we could avoid this disaster and we could start, getting the budget under control and cutting the spending and cutting the debt and getting on the road towards fiscal solvency. As a country, we chose not to do that. We chose to continue binging on out of control spending by going with candidates like Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. And now it is, here we are. I think it's unavoidable. I'm not as, I guess I'm not as certain as you are about the timing of it. It always seems like one of those things that you never think they're going to be able to delay the inevitable for much longer, and yet Well, you pump another $1 trillion of funny money into the economy, and that heroin high keeps us moving forward for at least a little while longer. But of course, as long as you aren't dealing with the underlying fundamental issues in the economy, and you're just kind of creating bigger and bigger bubbles, and that means when it pops, it's going to be even worse. So when you say that
Yeah.
it's going to be worse than 2008, I think it's obviously going to be, because we never dealt with the underlying problems of 2008
Yeah.
and the crisis there. But so yes, I mean, helping people prepare, getting government out of the way, allowing people to be able to save and transact in real money, and money that is sound and can't be inflated by central bankers. I think that's essential.
Hmm.
Now, to Jim, though, I mean, I really appreciate you bringing this back to him, because, of course, we want to honor Jim and share
Yeah.
some thoughts and memories about him, not just honor the work that he's done on the Sound Money movement, but um, I'll say I was really excited to get to talk with Jim. He's been uh, I would say someone I've admired from afar for a long time, and a lot of ways. I think a lot of the liberty legislators elected across this country are following in Jim Forsyth's model, whether they know it or not. I think he helped establish this model,
Yeah.
and I mean, I guess what can you say a little bit? I guess to Jim, and obviously we've spoken about kind of what he has done with building up Citizens for Sound Money, but um, I don't know. Is there anything else like uh, you'd like to say about as
Yeah.
we remember him?
Yeah, I when I was at the Liberty Forum, I thought I was gonna have to speak on and run the panel, but we were able to bring our chairman and he did that. So I was thinking about what could I say about Jim? And one thing that really stood out to me was that he was a true servant leader and a servant of the people. He started serving in the Air Force, in the military, right? Immediately after that, he um, then became a state senator, serving the people. Then he started shortly after that, Citizens Sound Money, to help people with their financial issues with fiat currency, and and even in him being my boss, right? He was the chairman, I was executive director. I mean, he was a bridge builder. He was a man of peace. He was able. He told me stories about when he was in the Senate, and we were lobbying the sound money bill, and I call him. I'm saying, this senator is screwing the bill, where the bill's dead. He's like, "Whoa, Danny, wait." It's like, I thought my bill, which Jim was responsible for getting the tax credits for education passed. He was a two-term senator, and he got three major pieces of legislation passed, and he was able to do that by building bridges,
Yeah,
finding commonality, and being forgiving. Jim Forsyth was one of the most big-hearted, kind, peaceful individuals, and people, when they met him, he would leave an indelible mark on their being, on their soul. And once you meet Jim and you speak to him, you're changed for the better. And that's something
yeah,
that we're all gonna miss.
yeah. I hear you, man. I regret that I didn't get to know him better. Um, but I feel very much like at least in the New Hampshire Liberty Movement. I mean, really, in the American Liberty Movement,
Yeah.
he left a mark, and he set an example that
Yeah.
um
And we're gonna spread that. We're gonna
yeah,
spread the what he did, and we're gonna spread the sound money movement. The last decision he made on the board, and he was so adamant about doing this. He said he was even willing to finance it himself. Was to move forward with a TV show that we are currently shooting across the world. It called the Sound Money Movement, and I think the subtitle is what I forget what it's called. I think it's free. It's something about sound money being the foundation of freedom, or the foundation of freedom. The sound money movement, the foundation of freedom. And he was so adamant about it. I mean, Jim had an accident on a Sunday. We made the decision on Saturday, and he told me that that weekend, that night, it was a victory event for our organization. It was the first time in 3 years since our founding that we actually met in person with the board and our advisory board, and it was so sublime. We had so many people from different backgrounds that all are believers in sound money. Jim said it was like having a spiritual experience. The amazing time that we had and everything that we discussed in the future of the sound money movement. And he got on the phone after we voted. He made me call the producer, executive, the director of the show. He's like, listen, I want this show to go on, and if we don't raise the money, I will put the money down to get the show started, right? So we're gonna make sure that the world knows that Jim was a founding father of the sound money movement, and that we're gonna educate the world. And it's likely going to be on Discovery Network and most likely the Science Channel. We're not 100% certain yet, but that's why we're here in Missouri. That's why we had a show, film crew in the Liberty Forum. They're going to be. We're going to be at Pork Fest. By the way,
All
we are a
right.
diamond sponsor with Alpine Gold. Um,
Awesome.
so we'll be there as well. And look, man, I'm all about spreading the sound money movement. If it wasn't for Jim Forsyth, I would not be as educated on the sound money, physical side of sound money as I am. Jim led by example. He was a humble leader, a humble servant, and he is so many people around the world were impacted by his loss. And we're having a celebration of life on May 18th. And we have people all over the world flying into DC to celebrate Jim Forsyth's life. And Eric, you're more than welcome to come and celebrate his life with us. And I'd love to see you there and anybody else that would,
I-
want to celebrate his life as well.
I'd love to be there. Let me check my calendar, and I my only regret is that I wish I'd gotten to know Jim much better,
Yeah.
and I was looking forward to getting to know him better. I was looking
Amen.
forward to. I'm really glad to have you, Daniel. I was looking forward to being able to connect with Jim and swap stories about our respective fights in our various
Yeah.
state legislatures, and he's he's left a mark, and we're
Yeah.
all we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and
Yeah.
the giants whose shoulders we're standing on, they were standing on the shoulders of giants too,
Yeah.
so
One thing about Jim is he wouldn't want us crying about him. He had an amazing sense of humor, and that's another thing that we're gonna highlight. Man, he was so funny. There are things that he would do. I just laugh and crack up. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but Jim was even on the hospital bed. He had a stroke after the accident, and he was
mm,
joking around with the nurses. He was just making fun. He just had such a great sense of humor. He's such a great man. So
yeah,
yeah, I get it. One of my regrets is not being alive, I guess, early enough to meet Ronald Reagan in person. I completely get that, with Jim. I mean, he was an amazing man. You guys would have gotten along great. I think sharing war stories about working in the Senate, in Maine and New Hampshire would have been fun for both of you. But it's there are a lot of people who knew him very well that can share stories, and you'll hear a lot of that at a
yeah.
celebration of life.
Well, I'll have to check my calendar, but I'd love to be there, and I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm sure that Jim is. I'm sure he's looking down, and I'm sure he's very proud knowing that folks are continuing on the work that he has left behind. I mean, it's a testament, when a leader leaves,
Yeah.
and by whether by choice or not by choice,
Yeah.
when a leader leaves any organization or leaves this planet, and the work that they had set out to do continues on. I mean, that's a real testament to their leadership, right?
Yeah.
There's I often think about um, you know I I like the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you've ever read the Tao Te Ching. It's Eastern philosophy. It's the kind of book of Taoism,
Okay,
and there's this,
gotcha.
and there's this passage in there I always go back to, and I'm thinking about how to be a good leader and how to be an effective leader. And they say, the worst leader is one who is feared. The next best is merely respected. The next best is loved. But the best leader among them is the one who, when his work is done, the people say, we did it all by ourselves.
Mm.
And so I guess Jim is at that phase. The
Yeah.
people are continuing on the work. And the people might not even, whether in the sound money movement, or I know he was a big advocate and really started and helped pioneer the effort for school choice in New Hampshire, which has
Yeah.
made so much progress. I mean, New
So
Hampshire is
many.
leading the way on
Yeah.
school choice now. Whether people know it or not, Jim is leading them.
Yeah.
And how effective a leader he has been, that people don't even know, that even as
Mhm.
he's departed us,
Yeah.
people are still following the example that he left behind.
Yep. Yeah, he left an amazing legacy, and every single one of us on the board, including myself, we're picking up his torch of liberty and freedom, and we're marching straight ahead and moving forward and carrying that legacy with us. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that what he worked on, and basically more than half of his life, continues on, and we impact as many people as possible. And that was all because of him.
Yeah. Well, I know you're busy lobbying the Missouri legislature and trying to get this constitutional money. Is it the Constitutional Money Act? Is that what you called it?
Yes.
The Constitutional Money Act. Well, I certainly well, I hope that you get Missouri as your first domino. I wish that New Hampshire had. What was this legislation sponsored in New Hampshire?
Yeah, it was Representative Keith Amon was a sponsor.
All right.
And it was actually New Hampshire was the first state we went to because of Jim's contacts. It was
Yeah.
the first state that we presented the Sound Money Act. Then it was South Carolina and Florida, and then we worked in Texas before that. But yeah, unfortunately, it didn't get passed. Well, you know how it works in New Hampshire, and everything gets to the floor, but it wasn't voted favorably in the finance committee. But we're hoping, if Missouri gets it done, New Hampshire takes a little, look at what Missouri did and it's like, hey, maybe we should do the same thing.
And sometimes it takes a few. You get the roll call vote, and then you can let
Yeah.
the people know how their legislators are voting, and then the people who vote wrong realize, boy, a lot of people are angry at me. Maybe I need
Yeah.
to reconsider. So sometimes it takes a few times up to bat. Certainly, I've seen that with like the passage of constitutional carry across the country, and those early states where it first came forward. It took a few times,
Yeah.
and I'm sure advancing sound money may take a few times, but man, if you're able to get this done in Missouri, hopefully our legislators in New Hampshire will realize, boy, they really missed the opportunity to be the first. But you know what? All good things come to New Hampshire eventually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll keep
But you know
working at
what?
it.
Missouri is showing the country as the show me state that if they get it done, they're the first ones to show the rest of the country how to move forward.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, Daniel, any final words you want to share before we wrap up for the evening?
Yeah, I'll just share about our website, and if you want to support us, if you want to support the Sound Money movement, lobbying isn't free. We take donations, and you can go to citizens the number 4 soundmoney.org, citizens for soundmoney.org. Go on there. We have our Twitter, and our links to our socials there. Support what we're doing. And yeah, let us know. Send us a message if you want us to bring the Sound Money Act to your state, or if you want to learn more about which states have had the Sound Money Act passed, or not passed, but filed. There, you can go to our legislative area, click on the states, and there's a list of all the states on the website to see if your state had a legislator that filed the bill or was interested in the bill.
And when people go to your website and they choose to donate, are they able to donate in anything other than Federal Reserve notes?
Yeah, actually, if you go to the shop, you can donate in gold or silver. So if you wanted to send electronic gold or silver, Kinesis gold and Kinesis silver, you can do that.
All right. I'm sure that's an even more valuable gift. Send some sound money to support sound money.
Yeah, it doesn't lose value.
Well, Daniel, I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and for
Thank
carrying on
you.
Jim's legacy, for fighting for sound money, and for sharing some memories about a great friend to freedom and New Hampshire, Jim Forsyth.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric, for having me on.
Absolutely. My pleasure. All right, everyone. That's the show. But before we go, I want to promote one more time. We just heard that our guest, Daniel Diaz, and Citizens for Sound Money are going to be joining us at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So what are you waiting for? Over half the tickets are sold. It will sell out. It does typically sell out every single year. So don't wait. Don't be one of those people who thought you were going to wait to the last minute and make up your mind, and then you find out it's too late. It's too late. You missed your chance to go to the family-friendly Freedom Festival with 2,000 of your favorite libertarians all camping at Rogers Campground in Lancaster, New Hampshire at porkfest.com. Just remember, that's pork with a C, not with a K, just like your humble host. If anyone spelled my name Eric with a K instead of a C, I'd be pretty upset about it. And if you spell Porkfest with a K instead of a C, you're not going to end up at the family-friendly Freedom Festival you're looking for. So go to porkfest.com with a C, grab your tickets, grab your campsites while supplies last. Ron Paul, Spike Cohen, Scott Horton, Gene Epstein, Jeffrey Tucker, James Bovard, David Freeman, Jack Hunter, Daniel Diaz, Citizens for Sound Money. So many folks, you aren't going to want to miss out. So get your tickets. All right. That's it for me this evening, everyone. I want to say thank you to our technical producer, as always, Justin O'Donnell, for his work, making this show run so smoothly. And furthermore, my opinion is, and boy, is this an appropriate opinion to have at the end of this episode, the Federal Reserve should be destroyed. Thank you all very much. Good night, everyone.